The capital city of Zerathia shimmered under twin suns, its towers rising like crystal spires into the pale pink sky. Alien ships glided silently between the buildings, leaving trails of colored light. The streets below were a maze of alien pedestrians, each species moving with its own rhythm, color, and shape. Among them, humans were rare and often stared at curiously. Nathan Hayes, the human envoy, walked through the grand plaza with calm steps. He was used to strange looks. After all, he was representing Earth for the first time in this glittering city. His uniform was simple, clean, and practical, contrasting with the extravagant robes and flowing garments of the alien dignitaries around him. Nathan carried no weapons, no ornaments, nothing to suggest that he was someone to be feared or envied, but in his calm, silent way, he carried an authority that drew attention. Today he was to attend the Zyrathian Diplomatic Gala, an event hosted by the royal family. The gala was a celebration of interstellar alliances, a chance for nobles and dignitaries from across the galaxy to meet, show off their wealth, and perhaps assert their power. Nathan had been briefed. The alien royals were proud, witty, and sometimes merciless with newcomers who did not understand their customs. At the entrance of the royal palace, Nathan paused. The building was magnificent. Towers of glass and metal caught the sunlight, reflecting rainbows across the plaza. Ornate bridges connected different levels, and floating gardens hovered above the streets. Nathan took a deep breath. He was far from Earth, but he was ready. He had a job to do, and he had trained for this moment. Inside, the gala was a swirl of movement. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors mingled, their voices a melodic hum of chatter, laughter, and strange sounds humans could barely imitate. Nathan observed quietly, making mental notes. He greeted a few diplomats politely, bowing slightly, shaking hands carefully when invited. Some looked surprised by his manners. Others were intrigued by his calm, confident presence. And then he saw her. Princess Lyriel. At 19, she was already one of the most famous young royals in the galaxy. Her skin shimmered like molten silver, her hair floated around her in soft waves, and her eyes glowed faintly with a color no human had a name for. She wore a gown that seemed alive, shifting colors as she moved. She was talking to a small group of alien nobles when her gaze landed on Nathan. Her expression changed instantly, from curiosity to amusement. She leaned closer to her companions and whispered something. They all laughed softly. Lyriel's reputation preceded her. Sharp-tongued, playful, sometimes cruel without realizing it. She had never met a human before, and the new species fascinated her. Lyriel stepped forward. Nathan did not bow or wave. He simply looked at her with calm, steady eyes. That alone made her pause. No fear, no awe, no fluster. Humans were unusual, certainly, but she had expected them to be polite, maybe nervous, perhaps easily intimidated. This one wasn't. "Well, well," she said, her voice smooth and musical, yet carrying a teasing edge. "Earth sends us a human. How quaint. Tell me, human, do you really think you belong here among beings of greatness?" The group around her chuckled. Some nudged each other, expecting Nathan to stumble, to bow, or at least show some reaction. Instead, Nathan straightened his shoulders and said nothing. Lyriel raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so you are silent. Very well. Perhaps you have manners, or perhaps you are too dull to speak. Either way, it will be interesting to see." She smiled, a small mischievous curl of her lips, and turned to her companions. "Watch closely. This human may surprise us, or fail spectacularly." Nathan simply continued to observe. He did not flinch. He did not react with anger or pride. He just stood, composed, like a calm center in a storm of alien energy. Lyriel frowned slightly, confused. No one ignored her like this, ever. She decided to test him further. "You know," she said, stepping closer so her voice alone carried through the room. "On my world, humans are said to be clever, yes? But here, you look ordinary, fragile, small. Can you even survive in this galaxy of wonders and danger? The words were playful, but they carried an edge, a challenge. Many of the onlookers expected Nathan to frown, to protest, to bow, and apologize, or at least stammer. But Nathan did none of these things. He simply turned his gaze slightly to the floor, adjusted the sleeve of his uniform, and then walked away. The room froze. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The princess had been insulted. No one ignored her. No one. And this human had not. Only ignored her words. He had walked away without even a glance. Lyriel's cheeks flushed, not from anger, but from shock. Her companions whispered among themselves, trying to interpret the human's strange behavior. Some giggled nervously, unsure if it was bravery, rudeness, or something else entirely. Lyriel, however, was determined. She followed him through the grand hallways, trying to catch up without appearing too eager. Nathan moved with a quiet confidence, his eyes scanning the crowd, noting every alien face, every gesture. He was calm, polite, respectful, and completely unbothered by the princess's previous words. It was unusual. In Zyrathia, pride and status ruled. Diplomats were often tested with subtle insults, tricky questions, and even clever traps. Most newcomers floundered. Most humans, she had heard, were soft and unpredictable. Yet this one seemed different. Nathan reached a quieter section of the palace, near a floating garden suspended over the city streets. Here the music of the gala softened, replaced by the gentle hum of energy barriers and alien fountains. He paused, taking a moment to observe the garden, the architecture, and even the city outside. Lyriel approached slowly, her curiosity stronger than her pride. "Why did you walk away?" she asked, her tone both teasing and serious. Nathan looked at her for the first time since the encounter. His eyes were calm, steady. "Because words are easy. Actions matter more." Lyriel blinked. She had expected defensiveness, indignation, perhaps even anger. Instead, he had given her a principle, something grounded and calm. "And you believe walking away proves that?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. Nathan smiled faintly, but it was not mocking. "It shows respect. For myself, for others, and for the conversation that might matter later." Lyriel tilted her head. The human's words were strange, unfamiliar. He did not act like an alien. He did not fight for attention or dominance. Yet there was a strength in his calmness, a quiet power that made her reconsider her assumptions. She laughed softly, not in mockery but in wonder. "I see. Earth humans are interesting. You do not bend under pride or fear. Perhaps there is more to you than I expected." Nathan nodded politely. "Perhaps, but that will not matter until we work together, or against each other. And I prefer working together, if possible." Lyriel's curiosity grew. She realized that this human was not just another visitor. He was a puzzle, a challenge, and perhaps someone worth understanding. As the twin suns outside dipped lower in the sky, casting pink and orange light across the palace, Lyriel made a silent decision. She would learn more about this human, not out of malice or pride, but out of curiosity. And perhaps, just perhaps, he might teach her something about humans' diplomacy and patience that she had never known before. After the gala, the city of Zyrathia continued to glow under the twin suns, but inside the palace a different kind of energy lingered. Princess Lyriel could not stop thinking about the human who had dared to ignore her. Not just ignored her, but walked away calmly without a word, without a single trace of fear or pride. Lyriel had faced countless dignitaries and diplomats. She was trained in the art of observation, manipulation, and social dominance. Usually, when someone offended her or when she offended them, they reacted quickly. People either bowed, argued, or tried to regain their dignity. Humans, she had heard, were unpredictable, but they were supposed to be fragile and simple. Yet Nathan Hayes was nothing like she had expected. The princess found herself walking through the quiet corridors of the palace late into the evening. She moved without purpose, or perhaps with a purpose she could not yet name. She had to see him again. Not to confront him exactly, but to understand him. Meanwhile, Nathan walked calmly through the palace gardens, a serene smile on his face. The floating gardens were alive with glowing plants that shifted colors, sending soft glimmers across the pathway. He observed the alien flora with curiosity and noted its patterns, quietly recording information for the Earth delegation's report. He always noticed details that others missed. The palace was still alive with diplomats and royals, but Nathan did not need to seek attention. His presence commanded a subtle respect that did not demand it. Aliens who initially stared now began to glance at him with quiet curiosity. Some whispered to one another, asking, "Who is this human? Why is he so calm?" Lyriel, keeping a careful distance, watched him from behind a cluster of luminescent trees. She studied how he moved, how he interacted with the environment, and how others responded to him. There was something unusual about him, something that did not fit the stereotype of humans she had been told. Her first instinct had been to test him, to embarrass him, or provoke a reaction. But seeing him now, she realized that he seemed untouchable, not because he was powerful or armed, but because he did not give others the chance to overpower him emotionally. He carried himself with quiet confidence and a subtle intelligence that made his presence felt even without words. Lyriel decided to approach him, but not directly. She wanted to observe more before revealing herself. She followed him through a series of winding paths in the gardens, noting how he politely nodded to passing alien servants and dignitaries, listened carefully when asked questions, and never interrupted. Nathan noticed her presence eventually, of course, but he did not react in the way she expected. He did not stare, he did not frown, and he certainly did not call her out. Instead, he simply smiled politely and continued walking. That smile, gentle, calm, confident, made Lyriel pause. It was not a smile of arrogance or mockery. It was a smile of understanding, of patience, and somehow, quiet power. The princess found herself intrigued. What is this human thinking? She wondered. Why is he not afraid? Why does he not react to me? Why is he so different? The next day, during the formal diplomatic sessions, Nathan's demeanor continued to draw attention. Aliens who were used to flamboyant displays of power or subtle dominance were caught off guard by his straightforward, thoughtful approach. He spoke clearly, asked relevant questions, and respected the alien protocols without appearing subservient. Lyriel, sitting at the front with her advisors, could not help but notice. When Nathan answered a question about trade protocols, he used examples from Earth that were surprisingly innovative yet completely respectful of alien customs. His calm reasoning impressed even the most skeptical Zerathian ministers. After the session, whispers spread through the corridors. Some diplomats quietly approached one another, comparing notes. "He thinks differently," one said. "He does not follow our usual hierarchy, yet he commands respect." Another muttered, "He adapts quickly, understands cultural nuances, and never acts out of pride. Incredible for a human." Lyriel's curiosity grew. She found herself arranging small, coincidental meetings with Nathan. Each time she watched him solve problems in ways that she, despite her intelligence and training, had not considered. One time, a minor misunderstanding between two alien factions arose over resource allocation. Nathan calmly analyzed the situation, proposed a fair compromise, and convinced both sides to accept it, all without raising his voice or showing irritation. The princess observed silently, almost begrudgingly admiring his skills. This human was not just clever, he was capable of empathy, patience, and logic in ways that many alien diplomats lacked. He did not dominate through status or intimidation. He dominated through reason, respect, and integrity. Lyriel began to feel a strange mix of admiration and confusion. She had been trained to expect fear, arrogance, or pride in others, but Nathan displayed none of these. His confidence was subtle but undeniable. His presence made her think differently, challenged her assumptions, and for the first time, made her question her own approach to power and diplomacy. Over the next few days, she continued to observe him. Nathan interacted politely with junior staff, listened to advisors, and treated the palace workers with respect. Aliens who had initially mocked the human began to nod appreciatively. They were learning from him without even realizing it. Lyriel realized that the ripple effect of Nathan's presence was growing. His calm, intelligent approach influenced not just her, but the entire environment. Aliens began to reconsider the traditional ways of asserting dominance. Diplomats who prided themselves on cunning and power found themselves subtly guided toward fairness and reason. One afternoon, Lyriel finally approached Nathan directly. They met near a floating fountain where light danced across the water in a spectrum of colors. "You continue to surprise me," she admitted, her voice a mix of challenge and curiosity. "I thought humans were simple, fragile, but you are neither. You act with patience, and yet you seem to command respect effortlessly." Nathan smiled modestly. "I do not try to command respect. I just try to be fair and calm. That seems to work better than arguing or showing pride." Lyriel tilted her head. She had expected arrogance or boastfulness. Instead, she found sincerity. "And yet it works. Perhaps humans are different than I imagined. Perhaps more capable." Nathan nodded. "We all have different strengths. Sometimes subtlety and patience are stronger than power or pride." The princess considered his words carefully. She began to see a new perspective, one that contrasted sharply with the competitive, status-driven society she had been raised in. Nathan's approach was not weak. It was intelligent, deliberate, and effective. His influence on others was growing quietly, like water shaping stone. As days passed, Lyriel continued to observe Nathan, often finding herself impressed and even inspired. She realized that the human's quiet strength and intelligence were slowly transforming not just her perspective but the environment around her. Diplomats, nobles, and staff began to adopt some of his calm, reasoned approach, sometimes without even noticing. For the first time, Lyriel felt a strange new emotion: respect. Respect for someone who was not of her world, not of her status, yet demonstrated qualities she had not fully understood before. She wondered how far this human could go, how many more minds he could influence, and whether she herself could learn from him. Nathan, unaware of the full extent of his impact, continued his duties calmly. He did not seek recognition or praise, yet his presence created ripples across the diplomatic community. Aliens who once mocked humans quietly reconsidered their assumptions. The princess who had once aimed to embarrass him now found herself curious, cautious, and intrigued. The ripple effect had begun. One human, through intelligence, patience, and quiet dignity, was slowly changing perceptions across the palace, and possibly across the galaxy. And Princess Lyriel, watching him from a distance, realized that the challenge he presented was far greater than any she had faced before. Not a challenge of power or pride, but a challenge of understanding, respect, and the quiet, undeniable strength of humanity. For the first time, she felt that maybe humans were not just simple beings. Maybe, just maybe, they were capable of much more than she had ever imagined. Princess Lyriel could not stop thinking about Nathan Hayes. The more she watched him, the more curious she became. He was calm, intelligent, and respectful, but there was something else she could not quite figure out. Something about the way he influenced others without trying, without boasting. Lyriel had grown up surrounded by cunning, diplomacy, and subtle power plays. In Zerathia, young royals were trained to observe, test, and sometimes outwit those who appeared superior. Most aliens reacted predictably to pride or insult. Humans, she had been told, were fragile, emotional, and easily swayed. Nathan Hayes had proven all of that wrong. So, she decided to test him. Not with an insult, not with force, but with a challenge. The royal advisors had been preparing a complex diplomatic simulation for the young royals. a puzzle of negotiation and strategy designed to measure intelligence, foresight, and cultural understanding. Lyriel saw her opportunity. If Nathan could solve it, she would have undeniable proof of his abilities. If he failed, well, that was unlikely, but it would satisfy her curiosity. The simulation took place in a holographic chamber, walls glowing softly with shifting patterns. A round table hovered in the center, with displays projecting a miniature galaxy. Factions of planets, resource conflicts, and interstellar trade routes were represented in vivid color. The challenge? Negotiate peace, solve a crisis, and maintain balance among the factions. Lyriel arrived first, wearing her flowing gown that shimmered like liquid silver. Nathan followed, calm as ever, observing the chamber with interest. He did not seem intimidated by the technology, the grandeur, or the presence of the princess. "Welcome, human," Lyriel said with a teasing smile. "Today, you will see how alien diplomacy works. Think of this as a friendly test. Solve the puzzle, and perhaps you will surprise me further." Nathan nodded politely. "I am ready. I will do my best." Lyriel raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "Your best? We shall see." The simulation began. Miniature holographic fleets moved across the table. Resource disputes flared between planets. Alien factions argued over trade routes and alliances. The chamber's walls projected reports, news and alerts in rapid succession. Most humans would have been overwhelmed, confused, or anxious. Nathan, however, remained calm. He studied the holographic galaxy carefully, observing patterns, understanding relationships, and noting potential solutions. He listened when Lyriel and her advisors offered advice, politely considering their suggestions without immediately agreeing or disagreeing. Lyriel watched, her arms crossed, fascinated. "Most would panic at this stage," she whispered to an advisor. "He thinks clearly. He listens. He plans." Nathan began proposing solutions. He suggested a trade compromise between two factions, balanced resources to prevent shortages, and offered alliances that respected each planet's culture and values. Every proposal was carefully considered, every decision logical yet creative. "Impressive," Lyriel murmured almost to herself. "He understands more than I expected." One particularly tricky scenario arose. Two factions demanded control of the same planetary system, and neither would compromise. The advisors expected Nathan to falter, to make a hasty decision, or to defer to Lyriel, but he did neither. He paused, analyzing the situation. Then he proposed an innovative solution, a rotational governance system. Each faction would have stewardship over the system for a fixed period, with shared responsibilities and agreed-upon trade benefits. This satisfied both factions' needs without violating cultural norms. Lyriel's jaw nearly dropped. She had considered that solution herself, but had dismissed it as too simple, too human. Yet, it worked perfectly. Nathan had taken a seemingly simple idea and applied it with precision, understanding, and tact. "Human," she said softly, almost reluctantly. "You may be more clever than I anticipated." Nathan smiled faintly, still focused on the simulation. "Cleverness is only useful if it helps others and resolves conflicts. That is what matters." The advisors and onlookers were astonished. The simulation was notoriously difficult, and most young royals struggled to solve even half of the scenarios. Nathan solved every challenge calmly and efficiently, respecting every faction's culture, values, and traditions. Lyriel, watching him, felt a mixture of admiration and confusion. She had intended this to be a challenge, a way to assert her superiority. Yet the human had exceeded all expectations. He had not only solved the puzzle, he had done so in a way that highlighted the strength of human reasoning, empathy, and diplomacy. As the simulation ended, the chamber fell silent. The holograms faded, leaving only the soft glow of the walls. Nathan turned to Lyriel and bowed slightly, polite but unassuming. "It seems the galaxy prefers cooperation over conflict," he said simply. Lyriel blinked. "Cooperation? Not dominance? Not clever manipulation?" This was foreign to her understanding of power. She had expected cunning, pride, maybe even arrogance. But what she saw instead was quiet intelligence and calm reasoning. "You," she began, but then stopped. What could she say? He had not only succeeded but done so in a way that revealed the strength of humans without arrogance or force. Her advisors whispered among themselves, amazed. "He understands not just the puzzle, but the people," one said quietly. "He is extraordinary." Lyriel felt a strange sensation. Respect, yes, but also a challenge to her own assumptions. She had always relied on her intellect, her status, her training. But Nathan had none of those advantages, and yet he was remarkable. "Tell me, human," she said finally, her voice softer than before. "How do you solve problems without pride, without showing superiority?" Nathan looked at her calmly. "I focus on the solution, not the recognition. I respect others and consider their needs. Pride or status cannot solve a problem. Understanding can." Lyriel nodded slowly, almost reluctantly. She realized that his approach was different from anything she had been taught. It was not weak. It was intelligent, deliberate, and effective. He had used logic, empathy, and careful observation to achieve results that many aliens could not match, even with centuries of training. Over the next few days, Lyriel continued to observe Nathan closely. She noticed how he handled minor disputes among staff, how he listened attentively, and how his calm presence seemed to influence others. Aliens who were used to hierarchical dominance began to follow his example, respecting him quietly without being told to do so. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens together, Lyriel spoke again. "I have tested you, human. You have not failed. In fact, you have exceeded all expectations. But tell me, why do you not show pride? Why do you not assert dominance like others?" Nathan looked at her, his expression calm and thoughtful. "Dominance is temporary. Respect lasts longer. Influence is better earned through understanding than through force or pride. That is how humans survive and thrive." Lyriel considered this carefully. She had grown up in a society that valued status, cunning, and pride above all else. Nathan's approach was alien to her, not just literally but in its philosophy. And yet, she could not deny its effectiveness. She realized that she had underestimated humans. Not all humans were fragile or simple. Some, like Nathan Hayes, had qualities that could change perspectives, influence minds, and solve problems in ways that even the most cunning aliens could not anticipate. That night, Lyriel lay in her quarters, thinking. She had intended to challenge the human to test his limits. Instead, he had challenged her assumptions, her pride, and her understanding of intelligence and diplomacy. She smiled softly to herself. Perhaps this human is more than I imagined. Perhaps he can teach me something. And somewhere in the palace, Nathan Hayes continued his work calmly, unaware of the deep impression he had left on the young princess. His quiet intelligence, patience, and respect for others had begun to ripple through the palace, subtly changing perceptions and influencing the environment around him. Lyriel realized that the challenge had not been a contest of skill alone. It had been a revelation. The human had not only solved a complex puzzle but had demonstrated the quiet, undeniable strength of humanity, intelligence, empathy, and calm decisiveness. For the first time, she felt a mix of admiration and intrigue. She wanted to understand him, learn from him, and perhaps even see how far these qualities could go. The ripple effect of Nathan's presence was growing, and she could feel it in the palace, in the diplomats, and most importantly, in herself. The grand halls of the Zerathian palace gleamed under the soft light of the twin suns. Today, the palace was unusually busy. Ambassadors and delegates from dozens of star systems had gathered for a special gala to discuss interstellar trade and alliances. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, diplomacy, and careful negotiations. Princess Lyriel walked among the crowd, her mind occupied with thoughts of Nathan Hayes. The young human envoy had already proven himself during the previous diplomatic simulation. His calm intelligence and respectful demeanor had impressed not only her, but also the palace advisors and visiting dignitaries. Yet Lyriel knew the real test was not simulations or puzzles. It was how he would handle real conflict when stakes were high. She found Nathan in the central hall, quietly observing the interactions among the delegates. He moved through the crowd with grace, offering polite nods and friendly smiles. No one seemed to rush him or intimidate him. He did not raise his voice, yet people naturally made way for him, listened when he spoke, and respected his presence. Lyriel approached him, curious and cautious. "Human," she said softly, "today will not be like your previous tests. Today you will see the reality of diplomacy. Conflicts can be sudden, and misunderstandings can escalate quickly. Are you ready for that?" Nathan looked at her calmly. "I am prepared. I will act as needed with reason and respect." Lyriel gave a faint smile. She admired his composure. "Very well. Let us see how you manage." The gala began smoothly, with speeches and introductions. Aliens from distant planets shared news of trade, science, and culture. Nathan listened attentively, taking mental notes of policies, agreements, and potential points of tension. Lyriel watched him closely, wondering how he would respond if a real conflict erupted. It did not take long. A sudden disagreement between two delegates from rival star systems flared up near the central stage. Voices rose, gestures became sharp, and other delegates began whispering anxiously. The disagreement was over trade routes and resource allocation, something that could have escalated quickly into a major diplomatic crisis. Most diplomats immediately reacted with tension, trying to assert dominance, prove their own intelligence, or sway the others with intimidation. Lyriel felt her own pulse quicken. The situation was delicate, and any wrong move could disrupt the gala and damage alliances. Nathan stepped forward calmly. He did not raise his voice. He did not interrupt. He observed the dispute carefully, noting the positions, needs, and concerns of both sides. His presence alone had a calming effect. Delegates noticed that he did not rush, did not judge, and did not assume superiority. He spoke gently but clearly, addressing both factions. "I understand both of your concerns," he said. "You both want access to the trade route and both have valid reasons. Perhaps we can find a solution that respects your needs and prevents conflict." The delegates paused. Most were not used to such calm reasoning. They expected debate, pressure, and the assertion of dominance. Instead, they encountered someone who listened, acknowledged their concerns, and suggested compromise. Nathan continued, "What if we allocate times for each faction to use the trade route with shared oversight to ensure fairness? Resources can be distributed in a way that benefits both parties. I am happy to work with you to draft an agreement that honors your cultures and needs." Lyriel watched in awe. This was exactly what she had hoped to see, how he would handle real tension. Nathan did not lecture or command. He guided, reasoned, and facilitated understanding. Slowly, the delegates began to respond positively, discussing terms instead of raising voices. The crisis continued for several tense minutes, but Nathan's approach held steady. He asked questions, proposed solutions, and encouraged collaboration. Neither side felt dominated or insulted. By the end, a fair and balanced agreement was reached. The delegates shook hands and thanked him for his guidance. Lyriel felt a rush of admiration and surprise. She had never seen anyone, alien or otherwise, manage a delicate situation so effectively without using pride, force, or intimidation. Nathan's intelligence, patience, and respect for others had created a solution that satisfied everyone. The ripple effect of his presence was clear. Other delegates began observing his methods, noting how calm reasoning and empathy could resolve disputes that would otherwise escalate into conflict. Some whispered to each other, saying, "Perhaps humans are more capable than we assumed." Lyriel approached him quietly after the agreement was finalized. "Human," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You have done more than I expected. You did not just solve the problem. You influenced others, guided them, and earned their respect. How do you do this? Nathan looked at her, calm and unassuming. I focus on understanding, not winning. I respect the needs of others and try to find solutions that work for everyone. Pride and dominance may give temporary advantage, but respect and cooperation last longer. Lyriel nodded slowly. She realized that he was not just clever, he was demonstrating the subtle, lasting power of humanity. In a society obsessed with status, competition, and influence, Nathan showed that intelligence, empathy, and patience were far stronger tools. Over the next few hours, the gala continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Aliens who had initially been skeptical of humans now observed Nathan's interactions with curiosity and respect. They noticed how his calm presence diffused tension, how his reasoning led to fair solutions, and how he influenced others without demanding it. Lyriel found herself walking beside him, studying his every move. She realized that he had not only changed the outcome of one dispute, but had subtly altered the mindset of everyone in the room. Diplomats who had been competitive or cautious were now more cooperative, more willing to listen, and more respectful of others' perspectives. By the end of the gala, Lyriel felt a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and a newfound respect for humanity. Nathan had done more than mediate a conflict. He had shown her the quiet, lasting strength of a human mind. His intelligence, patience, and empathy had created harmony where chaos could have prevailed. That night, as the palace quieted and the stars reflected off the crystal towers, Lyriel stood alone in the gardens. She thought about the events of the day. Nathan Hayes had challenged her assumptions, proven his worth, and subtly reshaped her understanding of humans. He had done all this without arrogance, without force, and without seeking recognition. She smiled softly. Perhaps humans are not as simple as I once thought, she whispered. Perhaps they have strengths we have overlooked. Nathan, unaware of the deep impression he had left, continued his work calmly. He was already considering the next steps for interstellar trade. Agreements, quietly noting patterns, potential conflicts, and opportunities for cooperation. His influence was growing, not through force or dominance, but through intelligence, empathy, and quiet leadership. Princess Lyriel realized something important. The challenge she had expected to pose to Nathan had instead become a lesson for her. She had always relied on pride, status, and intellect to assert her influence. Nathan showed her that respect, empathy, and calm reasoning could achieve far more. She felt a sense of excitement. There was more to learn, more to observe, and perhaps more to understand about humans. And she wanted to see how far Nathan's abilities could reach, not just in the palace, but across the galaxy. The ripple effect of Nathan's presence was undeniable. Aliens who had doubted humans now whispered about their potential, curious to see how Earth's representatives could influence galactic diplomacy. And the young princess, once confident in her superiority, now felt a challenge of understanding, respect, and recognition of humanity's quiet, undeniable strength. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace, Lyriel made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to observe Nathan, learn from him, and perhaps even follow his example in her own life. She had glimpsed a new kind of power, one that did not roar but persisted quietly and effectively. And Nathan Hayes? He continued his calm, steady work, unaware of how much he had already changed the perceptions of an entire alien civilization. The human had shown, without force or pride, that intelligence, patience, and empathy could achieve what power alone could not. That night, as the palace settled into quiet reflection, Princess Lyriel understood something she had never realized. Before, humans were capable of greatness not through dominance, status, or pride, but through understanding, respect, and quiet leadership. And she, for the first time, truly respected one of them. The revelation was complete. The young human envoy had not only navigated a crisis, but had subtly transformed the palace itself. His influence, though gentle, was undeniable. And Princess Lyriel, who had once sought to test and perhaps embarrass him, now found herself genuinely curious, admiring, and quietly inspired. The stage was set for the final chapter. Nathan Hayes had proven the quiet power of humanity. The ripple of his influence was spreading, and the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The morning after the gala, the palace of Zerathia was calm. The twin suns cast soft light over crystal towers and floating gardens, creating a sense of serenity that belied the events of the previous day. Delegates and ambassadors moved through the halls quietly, discussing trade agreements and sharing the lessons they had learned from the human envoy, Nathan Hayes. Princess Lyriel walked slowly through the gardens, her mind occupied with thoughts of him. She had observed Nathan over the past days, tested him, challenged him, and watched as he solved problems, mediated conflicts, and quietly influenced the palace without arrogance or force. He had not only impressed her, but had also changed her perspective on humans and diplomacy. Lyriel's footsteps slowed as she reached the fountain where Nathan often paused to reflect. The water shimmered like liquid crystal, reflecting the soft colors of the garden's glowing plants. She saw him standing there, calm and composed, his eyes focused on the flowing water, as if he could see patterns in its movement. For a moment, she hesitated. She had been proud, confident in her own abilities, and accustomed to being the center of attention. Yet this human had earned her respect not through power, status, or cunning, but through intelligence, patience, and quiet leadership. It was a new feeling, one she had never expected. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Human." Nathan turned, his expression polite and attentive. "Princess Lyriel," he said with a small nod. "Good morning." Lyriel took a deep breath. "I have been thinking about the past few days, about the simulation, the gala, and how you handled everything. I underestimated you." Nathan raised an eyebrow, calm as ever. "Underestimation happens. It is not a problem, as long as it is corrected." Lyriel smiled faintly, though it was tinged with humility. "Yes, corrected. You have shown patience, intelligence, and respect in ways that I have never seen before. You did not just solve problems. You guided others, influenced them, and earned their respect without trying to dominate. I admire that." Nathan's smile was modest. "Thank you. I do not seek admiration. I focus on understanding and helping others. That seems to be more effective than pride or force." Lyriel nodded slowly, thinking carefully about his words. "You are right. And I want to learn from you. Not just for myself, but for my people. Perhaps humans have strengths we have overlooked for too long." Nathan regarded her thoughtfully. "Humans do have unique abilities, yes, but everyone, alien or human, can learn and adapt. Respect, patience, and understanding are qualities anyone can develop." The princess studied him for a moment, considering the implications. She realized that she had been raised to value status, cunning, and pride above all else. Nathan's approach was different, but it was effective, far more effective in many ways than she had ever imagined. "I have another reason for speaking to you," she continued, her tone gentle. "I owe you an apology." Nathan's expression remained calm, but his eyes reflected curiosity. "An apology?" Lyriel nodded. "For my words at the gala, for underestimating you, and for the assumptions I made about humans. I see now that I was wrong. You are not simple or fragile. You are capable, intelligent, and remarkable. I am sorry for offending you." Nathan's lips curved into a small, forgiving smile. "Thank you. Apology accepted. There is no harm done. Learning and understanding are more important than past mistakes." Lyriel felt a warmth in her chest she had not expected. This human, quiet, intelligent, and composed, had not only solved conflicts but had also taught her something about humility, respect, and the power of understanding. "Perhaps we can work together," she said finally. "I can learn from you, and you can guide me in understanding humans better, for the sake of our worlds and our alliances." Nathan nodded politely. "I would be happy to. Collaboration is the best way to achieve lasting solutions." Over the next few weeks, Lyriel and Nathan worked closely together. They reviewed trade agreements, mediated minor disputes, and coordinated cultural exchanges between humans and Zerathians. Nathan's calm reasoning and fair approach impressed not only the princess but also the palace advisors, diplomats, and visiting ambassadors. Lyriel noticed subtle changes in the palace. Diplomats who had once relied on status, dominance, or cunning now sought Nathan's advice, emulating his patient and thoughtful style. Junior royals observed the collaboration and began to value respect and intelligence over pride and manipulation. Even the staff and workers in the palace were affected. Nathan treated them with respect, listened to their concerns, and acknowledged their contributions. His influence spread quietly, creating an environment where cooperation and understanding thrived. One afternoon, Lyriel and Nathan walked together along a floating garden path. Soft light reflected off the plants, and the hum of energy barriers provided a gentle backdrop. Lyriel spoke first, her tone thoughtful. "You know, human, when I first saw you, I thought you would be easy to dismiss. Fragile, simple, predictable. I was wrong. You have shown me that humans have qualities that are rare even among the most advanced aliens. Intelligence, patience, empathy, understanding, and quiet strength. It is remarkable." Nathan smiled humbly. "Thank you, Princess. Humans can be many things, but we try to learn, adapt, and solve problems. Perhaps that is why we survive and sometimes thrive, where others may fail." Lyriel laughed softly, a sound that blended amusement and admiration. "You are far more impressive than I imagined. I am glad I met you." Nathan regarded her with calm interest. "And I am glad to meet you as well. Learning about other cultures, understanding perspectives, and working together, that is the best part of diplomacy." The princess considered his words. She realized that Nathan's influence had gone far beyond solving conflicts or completing simulations. He had subtly reshaped her worldview, taught her to value patience and empathy, and demonstrated the quiet power of humans in ways that no other alien had ever done. That evening, the palace held a small celebration for the successful gala and the improved interstellar relations. Delegates from different systems gathered to express their gratitude and share their experiences. Many spoke quietly about the human envoy, noting how his calm reasoning and respect had resolved tensions that could have escalated into long-term disputes. Lyriel watched Nathan interact with the delegates, and she felt a sense of pride, though not in herself but in what humanity could represent. Nathan did not seek recognition, yet his influence was undeniable. He had changed perceptions, created respect, and inspired others, all without force or arrogance. Later, when the celebration had ended and the palace quieted, Lyriel and Nathan walked together to the gardens once more. The twin suns had set, leaving soft starlight to reflect off the crystal towers. The floating gardens glowed gently, casting soft light on their path. "You have done more than I imagined, human," Lyriel said quietly. "Not just for me, but for my palace, my people, and even our allies. You have shown that humans are capable of more than we ever thought. Perhaps we can change the galaxy together, quietly through intelligence, respect, and understanding." Nathan nodded. "That is the hope. Cooperation, patience, and empathy can achieve what force alone cannot. Humans may not always be the strongest physically, but we can influence, guide, and inspire through reason and integrity." Lyriel smiled, her eyes reflecting admiration and determination. "I have learned much from you, and I will continue to observe, learn, and perhaps follow your example. You have shown me the quiet, lasting power of humanity." Nathan's expression remained calm, yet his presence radiated a quiet confidence. "And I will continue to learn from you, Princess. Together we can achieve understanding across worlds, fostering cooperation and respect." For the first time, Lyriel felt a sense of true partnership with another being, one built not on status, pride, or dominance, but on mutual respect, intelligence, and empathy. She had challenged him, tested him, and even insulted him, yet He had responded with calm dignity, earning her admiration and trust. The palace seemed brighter, more harmonious and more open. Diplomats and ambassadors whispered about the human way of solving conflicts. They noted how calm, reasoning, patience, and respect could achieve outcomes that aggression or pride could not. Lariel, walking beside Nathan, realized that the young human envoy had done more than impress her. He had changed perceptions, taught lessons, and demonstrated the quiet, undeniable strength of humanity. She thought to herself, perhaps humans are not just visitors to our galaxy. Perhaps they are a force of understanding and intelligence, capable of shaping events in ways that even the most advanced civilizations cannot anticipate. Nathan, as always, remained humble and focused, unaware of the full extent of his influence. Yet the ripple he had created spread farther than he could see, reaching hearts, minds, and systems across Zerathia and beyond. As they walked through the palace gardens, Liriel reached out and lightly touched his arm. "Thank you, human, for everything." Nathan smiled faintly, modestly. "It is my duty, and my honor." And so a new chapter began for Zerathia, for humanity, and for the galaxy. A chapter defined not by pride, force, or status, but by intelligence, patience, empathy, and the quiet, lasting power of a human who had shown that greatness often walks calmly, listens carefully, and solves problems with wisdom and respect.